The gold fever was raging everywhere, and young Kracke was one to get it too. So after 9 months, I'd saved enough money to take me to Maytown, the capital of the Palmer goldfields in North Queensland, 160 miles inland from Cooktown. On my arrival in Cooktown, I found that I could only get to Maytown on horseback or walk, as I had never been on a horse in my life. I ventured my passage with the mailman, who was taking passengers on horseback, charging £7 10 shillings for the use of the horse. The mail used to make 60 miles each the first day and second days, and the third 44 miles by dinner time into Maytown, all over rough, rocky, mountainous country. Not being able to ride or handle a horse, the mailman drove me along with the pack horses carrying the mail, and needless to say, after the first day's riding of 60 miles, some parts of my body were reduced to mincemeat. The second and third days, I had to be lifted from my horse. The township of Maytown was mostly all bark houses. Fully every other house was a hotel, and the streets constantly full of drunken people. Any kind of drinks were a shilling. The population at one time numbered to 11,000 whites and 30,000 Chinese. Murder by blacks was committed every day, and a person couldn't go anywhere without firearms. The miners used to have their rifles lying alongside of them while they worked, and even everyone would carry a revolver in his belt. Well, after my 2 weeks rest from my ride into Maytown, I thought I'd try my luck at getting gold. I got my tin dish, pick and shovel, and pegged out a claim in Jessop's Gully. My next door neighbours were Chinamen, to the left and right of me. A claim was 50 feet along the creek. The first dish I washed, I had a nice piece of gold, a little over 600 weight. The next one another nugget a little heavier, and I can express to you my joy in mining the gold, and I thought I'd soon become a millionaire. But my fortune very soon turned, and I never even got a single colour of gold after that. I was beginning already to let my hair hang down, and thought it wasn't such a great game after all, when, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Chinaman to the right of me gave a terrible howl. I thought a snake had bitten him, or perhaps the blacks had speared him. I ran over to him, and to my surprise Johnny had found a big nugget weighing over 100 ounces and worth about 450 pounds. This finished my looking for gold. I got fairly disgusted that an old Chinaman could find a lump of gold like that. So, in the beginning of 1883, I found myself working tunnel at the King of the Ranges mine on the Ida, a township 3 miles from Maytown. Wages £4 10 shillings per week. I had to do mostly night work, and no doubt some of you may remember or know of the big comet in that year. This comet I could see every night when trucking my mullock out of the tunnel, right in front of me. In May 1884, after I had worked 6 months in the mine, Fisher Brothers asked me to manage a store at the Tate River tin mines, right in the middle of Cape York Peninsula on the 14th degree. The mines are in the banks of the Tate River and 25 miles from the junction with the Lynd River. To get there, I had to go to Cooktown, then by boat to Port Douglas, and thence a ride again for 165 miles inland, with no roads, only bridle tracks that in some places could hardly be seen. The Tate Tin Mines, the township as I will name it, consisted only of the store buildings. This formed the whole town. The mining company would post 40 to 50 men there in the wet season. That is to say from 8 to 10 weeks a year, and the rest of the year I would be the only inhabitant. The miners all going away to the coast and civilization. The store was built of logs piled one on top of each other in a pigsty fashion, with holes bored through to enable one to put the muzzle of a rifle through. The roof had 2 layers of canvas, about 12 inches apart for coolness, and the floor was made out of ant bed mixed like mortar, which by the way makes a very good floor, as mixed with bullock's blood or salt, it'll become really hard. Around the store for a distance of over 100 yards, every stump, tree or shrub is cleared away so that the blacks can't sneak up on you, and even then many deeds were committed by them dragging spears with their toes and so come around the house. Every house had only one door, and the kitchens or fireplaces are always built in front of the house instead of in the back. This is done on account of the blacks, so you can't be cut off from your house and perhaps find the blacks having possession of your house. With the store, everything is combined. Store, butcher shop, public house, post office, mining registry, and so on, all businesses in one. I was storekeeper, publican, butcher, postmaster, a kind of government residence, and a sworn-in constable. I even had the handcuffs, leg irons and all sorts of things, but never used them. Wasn't fool enough to. Everyone had firearms and perhaps better shots than I was. On 3 occasions I was surrounded by hostile blacks, and on the last occasion I managed to get my black boy to ride 100 miles to Herberton to get police protection. Inspector Stafford arrived with 10 black troopers and dispersed the blacks. Unfortunately, later my black boy was himself killed by blacks. I may here mention that in North Queensland in those days, troopers were stationed about every 100 miles. A detachment would consist of 13 black troopers and a white sub-inspector of police. The troopers were blacks from southern Queensland and therefore were very frightened of the northern blacks. They would take great delight in shooting them. They wore a blue, red-lined uniform with red cape, but once they're on duty to disperse the blacks, a polite way the government used to call it, they would be naked, having only the cartridge belt and cap on, and carry their .577 caliber rifle. In 1891, after managing the store for 11 years, the company gave me a holiday for 12 months on full pay. And it was then that I found my good wife in Goulburn, New South Wales. On our return to Queensland, she was the first white woman in that part of Australia, and the first white woman the blacks had seen. I might tell you that before I was married, I had 10 years of doing my own cooking. I'm quite an expert at it, and for 7 years I never saw once at a distance a white woman. And I can assure you, when I met the first lady to talk to, I really didn't know what to say, having conversed with men and blacks only all that time around. I made it a thing to study and learn everything about the blacks and could talk to them in their own language. Through a black boy I had, he used to tell me he had often eaten human flesh. He used to say, "White man taste all the same, too much salt. Chinaman very nice, and the blackfellow is the best eaten of all." The only thing a North Queensland black will not eat is pork. They will kill wild pigs just for the killing's sake, but never eat them. I had no idea of this at first and found it out only by accident. It happened one day that I had a general clean-up in the storeroom and there found about 35 to 40 pounds of bacon, much spoiled. There were lots of blacks about the place at the time, so I thought I would give them a good feed. I handed this bacon to the first man, who had a good look at it and smelt it for a minute or two. Then all at once he went to the wood heap, chopped a lump off it with an axe, and started rubbing himself all over with it. He then passed it on to the next, and about 100 of them repeated the same thing. This is the way my nice bacon was treated. It is a law among them that only a certain number of gins remain living. All the rest they let live until they are between 4 to 5 years of age, when on certain days, when the moon is full, they all meet for a great corrobboree. The father of the child kills it with a nulla nulla, and it is roasted whole. The chief of the tribe has the head for his part of it. I never forget when I saw this gruesome affair once myself, and I think if ever I could have shot blackfellows, I could have done so then. My own black boy told me one day that the blacks had killed a certain little gin, about 5 years old, who I knew well, having given the child many times a little to eat. The blacks were camped in the river about 100 yards from the store, and I went down to them, as usual, well armed. I knew the father of this child, and in their own language I asked him about her. He was sitting in front of a big heap of steaming sand, which I knew was one of their ovens. The blackfellow pointed towards this heap, and I thereupon kicked the sand away, and here to my horror I saw this poor unfortunate child half roasted already. It took me all my time, I can assure you, to keep from shooting this beast of a blackfellow. but I thought of a better plan. In post-haste, I went up to the store and got my double-barrel breech-loading gun. I may here mention that in most cases I used coarse salt and pepper to shoot them with, and therefore always had a stock of these cartridges. On this occasion, I took a number of the cartridges and went quietly down to the black camp. The blacks numbered about 400 all told, and at about 20 yards I opened fire on them with salt and pepper, and I can assure you they scattered in all directions, leaving all their weapons behind, which I piled in heaps and burnt. The poor unfortunate child I put in a box and buried on the bank of the river, so I only had the satisfaction of keeping them from eating it.